I was asking you, Steffen, about Trump's use of Twitter and what your feelings are about that in relation to how things have changed since 2008.
If I just say briefly what my idea was with the article, or the background, and one was to talk more about personhood, which was pretty central at the time, and having Mark Moscow as a co-supervisor, that was something he'd worked a lot on. And I noticed from Danish media that there was a lot of attention to digital media and how they affected who we were and how we saw ourselves, at least in our part of the world. And the other one was political communication. I mean, how did politicians take up these new modern forms of technology? The third thing is not as directly addressed in the introduction is a lot of the assumption in the 2000s that internet was flat and that digital technology would allow an egalitarian world order to emerge where everyone could have a voice. And as we can see today, that was very naive, at the least, I think. And I had something about that assumption that I also wanted to discuss. I mean, the ranking and the hierarchicization that emerges. And I guess we can see today with how much specific voices are heard, like Trump, for example, on Twitter. I mean, there are so many tweets, but how many are actually noticed? How many actually get circulation? If I should rethink what I did then, I mean, of course, things like MySpace would not have any, part of the article. I mean, that was a very big thing in the 2000s, but it's a niche thing today. Twitter would have, I think, I would need to write more about Twitter as a form of political communication if I did it today. I think there's a very big difference between the way that Obama in 2008 used Facebook as a way of making relationships and branding himself by showing, a form of numerical size to his person and his popularity, and the way that Trump continually hammers a message out, and it's a one-way communication. And of course, Twitter is different from Facebook, but I guess people also choose a medium that fits their ideas of how they can be influential and how they can appeal to certain audiences. Frederick Barth's old article on the guru and the conjurer might be a way to talk about this. In that article, Barth discusses the Bactaman conjurer. I mean, somewhere up in the New Guinea highlands, knowledge is transmitted in a way that keeps it secret and only gives it in direct sort of exchanges or handing down to younger students or younger pupils of the conjurer. Specific transmission to specific people who are capable of understanding and appreciating the knowledge in the right way. Whereas the Bali guru is more interested in a wider dissemination of or transmission of the true religious knowledge. So there did these different ideas of how you communicate and how you transmit something that is at play here. And that sort of contrast or comparison of different forms of transmitting knowledge might be an interesting way to look at the contrast between Obama in 2008 and Trump in 2016, that would have been. But there's more, I think, to the message in Twitter than you can just find out by just comparing. In a way, it doesn't matter as much what Trump writes in each message. I mean, we know what he's going to write. We know what he's writing about anyway by now. And we didn't in the beginning, but now we do. So it's very predictable. And he speaks to it with a loudspeaker to a specific audience. And also, I don't think they care that much about what he writes, as long as he writes against or rants against the right people that they all agree to hate. So it's not as much as what is said. It's more really going back to this idea from McLuhan that the medium is a message here. It's about saying something. And it's about, communicating as a fact, not what is necessarily always communicated. In a way, I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of phatic communion or phatic communication. It was originally an idea that Malinowski wrote about in his fieldwork in the Trobrians, where he noticed how during sort of public conversations, a lot of people would say sort of, yeah, I heard that too, or I saw that too. Just these sort of small utterances that don't really have a contribution to the conversation, but they indicate that the person is there and is still listening. I've seen media scholars use that to study Facebook communication as well by acknowledging sort of these forms of messages that were popular 10 years ago, maybe say like, oh, coffee smells good, right? You would write that in your Facebook account or Facebook page. But what is that? I mean, what kind of form of communication is that? Who's the audience? What is it for? And so people brought up that idea of phatic communion or phatic communication to say that there's a way of indicating that you're part of this community or part of this set of relationships without saying anything meaningful or having any sort of really important intention with it, except just saying you're here. And in a way, Trump is doing the same. I mean, I'm still here. I'm still shouting at you. I'm still your fighter. I'm still trying to, go against the elites or whatever he's trying to do. So in a way, there's something again in really all anthropology that I think is interesting for us to understand the way that political communication is happening here. The conjurer sees a lot of knowledge about, or true knowledge about the world as secret. And for it to be effective, it has to stay secret. So you can only transmit it to specific people who are initiated into the clan secrets or the secrets of what the nature and environment that you live in is really about, all the ancestral knowledge.